Everyone's trying to get out of town at once, and nobody's car is moving, and people are running down the highway clutching their kids and whatever belongings they can grab. Yep, now you got it. It's times like these you need your severe traffic station. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am, of course, your host, Andrew J. Polk, so thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social media pages, the ones that we're up on consistently enough anyway, and the entire point of this being to have a better conversation, essentially. I love the chime-ins that come with most of these, be it facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. And of course, you can drop those reacts over here, which we do appreciate in their own form and format as well. Flaco Jimenez dropping that like over on the Facebook page. We do appreciate it because it just helps with all that algorithmic stuff. A lot to talk about here today. Among other things, we've got some more data coming out about encounters being seen by across the entire southwest border area and the entire southern border, I guess I should more accurately say, plus looking at some of those updates coming out of more regionally, the Mcbride Fire, hopefully petering out and more resources being deployed here. But to talk more about some of the statewide things, we're also going to have a conversation that we had with Republican Party Chairman, Republican Party of Texas Chairman Matt Rinaldi, as he is also visiting the region here, well, as of right now, actually. So he is the chairman that is in place now after, of course, the departure of Alan West. And so visiting the area and going to be talking about a lot of these issues, actually a news conference that's scheduled for during our program, but towards the end of it here. So, but we had the chance to speak with him ahead of that and ahead of his arrival in the area about what he was going to be talking about. So we'll have, of course, more on that here today, but we'll again have that conversation with him today as our guest for the day here. So let's dive right into it here with some of these issues here. Again, coming out nationally today, 221,000 migrant encounters in March, according to Customs and Border Protection here, coming out today, and also more decrying of the situation and the way that this is being handled, coming out, among other things, from some national people involved in this, including, former acting commissioners of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan, specifically writing an op-ed recently on that here, and also Brendan Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council, saying specifically, and you can find this article over from our news partners at KFOX 14, that basically accusing the Biden administration of their immigration policies of helping cartels take part in serious criminal activity. So just to put it in context, yeah, that 221,000 encounters, again, the way encounters is considered is that this is each time that the Border Patrol agent, CBP, etc., has to deal with someone that is, well, trying to cross the border without necessarily authorization, be it other asylum seekers at the port of entries or those found, well, in between ports of entry, which is the vast majority of the territory we're talking about. And again, the important thing to highlight when we're talking about this is that while it may not be an absolute number of people that way, this is still each time that there has to have been a person dealt with by, well, CBP, Border Patrol, etc., federal authorities in general. So it still symbolizes the workload that is being put on, locally, regionally, nationally across the southern border, the amount of work that is having to be done in dealing with this. And as also was noted, the third time encounters have surpassed more than 200,000 since the current administration took office here. And it's also being pointed out that this is up significantly over previous years, up a certain amount of percentages. And so we're continuing this record-breaking pace when it comes to having to deal with these issues in our area. And I know we've talked about this quite a lot here and not intending to beat a broken drum here, but as the situation keeps evolving, we're of course going to be continuing to follow this because, again, this is even, you got to remember, before there may have been some whispers, some rumors, speculation was definitely out there about what would happen for Title 42 at this point. But we're only talking about March here. This is the entirety of the month of March. So it took them this long to get the numbers together, I suppose, here. So that was even really before the full announcement was really in place for the vast majority of that month here. Even if there was some speculation and whatever the cartel's marketing agency essentially was putting forth on it, not playing into this. So it only then raises the further question about what is going to happen now. I mean, March wasn't an unpleasant weather month, but it still had its own cold snaps and bit of problematic weather. So as we're now looking into April, when we've had, well, even just in our region, much better weather, what that is going to do, combined with this, again, one hell of a marketing line about the end of the removal process as it has basically existed with no replacement yet in sight. And that's some of the things that we're further going to be talking about, again, with Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, here coming up in next segment. But one other bit of regional business wanted to mention on Viv, because people keep, talking about, thoughts and prayers for them, those in the Mcbride Fire region, and again, around the village of Ruidoso in Lincoln County, among other things, that that they're kind of drawing down on some of that. The fire now, thankfully, 84% contained, with over 6,000 acres burned so far. So, I mean, it's still not entirely over, but there's starting to be, according to our news partners at KFOX 14, more suppression repair for the area, which is kind of a transition from the active firefighting to also then mitigating the, after effects. Among other things, when you have that much vegetation burned and on the types of terrain it can happen on, usually hilly areas, there can be things like, erosion and even mudslides or dirt slides, I guess, if you want to put it that way, but other areas and other impacts coming from this. So it's a good bit of news that they're getting closer to it being dealt with and done with, even if there have still been, other fatalities being dealt with. But also the drawdown is unfortunately happening in part because resources are being needed elsewhere. You may have heard about the Arizona fires, kind of in the Prescott area or surrounding that area, starting to crop up as well. So looking like it might be a very busy season for firefighters, and particularly the smoke jumpers and all those kind of very specialized and very important people that do that kind of firefighting here. Among other things, the Nogal Canyon fire, about 30 minutes north of Ruidoso and west of Capitan, also drawing some of the resources out. So still keep those people in New Mexico and in the regions that, and we'll get this broadcast, among other things, in your thoughts, and consider doing your charity work with some of that if you can. Hear some of the comments coming in over on social media. John Braselton saying, much more razor wire, too many open spaces along the border here. Again, not really. The here was my addition, but not really going to be affecting probably too much here in this area because, among other things, from the Texas efforts, the real gap, if you want to talk about physical infrastructure of border security, is going to be, in New Mexico from this area. So, again, some early conversations to be had about this. I mean, once you start getting far enough south, sure, you run out of the span of it. But, the real issue in areas that we're seeing at issue in our area, again, Sunland Park is pretty significant here. RJ further saying that CBP encounters 1 in 8, so multiply by 8 for more accurate number of illegal aliens entering here. I mean, some estimates vary, but it's pretty well understood that they're not that these encounters don't account for everyone that is. Though again, we're also seeing that as part of the migration pattern changes that have been going on. I mean, it's been shifting pretty rapidly comparatively to the, if you want to go back to like the 90s and before, very stable type of immigration patterns and crossings that we were seeing, including, essentially, single working age adults crossing to find their own work and trying to largely avoid authorities. We are still seeing that, the asylum claim process and kind of advent that has come on since, you can point to a little bit before the Obama administration. So, I mean, the types are still varying in our areas here. Carol Rank, a longer comment than I think will totally show up here, but unhappy with the Biden administration and how they're handling this border security and border control here. But we'll have to get to more into that here in the next segment. Again, going to be joined by Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, visiting the area at this time as well, talking more about some of these issues and some other statewide politics things. So that's going to lead us to our first break of the hour here right now. Again, a lot to talk about, and we'll keep getting into it here. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Again, a lot of comments over on social media, one of the better ways you can do so throughout the broadcast. But beyond that, if you're really wanting to drop us a line, we'll have the phone lines open after this coming interview. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. even if gas prices and, well, jet fuel prices that come along with it in its own short order may be putting a little bit of a kibosh on your travel plans. I have some very good news for you that you can still get those international flavors without even having to go out of town, not even to those regional boutiques that you may have expected to find that in, because there is a great local source to get those quality flavored olive oils, balsamic vinegars, and extra virgin olive oils, enhanced flavors. Your local source for over 40 varieties of all of this. Of course, the olive oils coming from some of the best places in the world for that: Tunisia, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and all of their balsamic vinegar is imported straight from the Modena province of Italy. Otherwise, it doesn't count as balsamic vinegar. And it's great stuff to try and great stuff for you to find out about, and really even not try out in the community as well, because they are out at those farmers markets, etc., particularly the Upper Valley's farmers markets happening on Sundays at the Hobby Lobby parking lot near Donovan and Mesa, technically off Crossroads is one of the easiest ways to get there. So look for them so you can try out some of them. But again, you can find all of their varieties by going to enhancedflavors.com. That's enhanced with a D, flavors.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Yarborough. Watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. An accident has got the right lane blocked on Joe Battle Boulevard southbound south of Montwood at New World Drive. Another crash on Joe Battle southbound south of Vista del Sol at Eschenbrenner Avenue. Bob Hope Drive can be your alternate. And road construction's got the right lane closed on Loop 375 eastbound at Rushing. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If April is showering your company with open job positions, check out Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Sponsor your first job today and get hiring by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
As a marketer, you want to reach everyone, adults, teens, millennials, but it's not like these groups all hang out in the same place, right? Actually wrong. They're all right here, listening to radio commercials just like this one. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM/FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is a leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/trial. That's ZipRecruiter.com/trial.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. We'll have that phone line open a little bit later, as we usually do. Again, because right now we're going to be talking in an interview we're able to do with Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, in advance of his visit to this area. Well, going on right now, as far as I'm aware. long as everything went according to plan. Anyway, some of the details going to be talking about during his visit here, Title 42, SB1. Oh, and also the turnout seen in some of the El Paso primaries recently, along with some of the other major statewide issues here. So again, we'll talk with him a little bit ahead of this on what the major issues going on in this area and some of these impacts on, well, the region here. So able to speak with him about that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more coming out in the coming days about that and what exactly he was talking about during his visit here. So again, from our conversation done earlier this week, here's what we were able to talk about. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we are recording this in advance of your visit here to the borderland region to talk about a variety of things. A lot of focus been happening on, of course, border issues and politics in the area. We have had Governor Greg Abbott, among others, in town recently for, well, a variety of purposes, both in talking to the border sheriff's conference, among other things, and also some campaigning here. So for people who are then going to be wondering about your visit here, what are some of the purposes that you are coming through the region for?
Well, we're coming to, we expect this to be one of the biggest red wave elections that we've had because of the Biden administration's failure on inflation, on border policy, on COVID, on virtually everything that it has tackled. Americans are seeing their lives get worse because of the policies of the Biden administration. So we want to visit the GOP, visit our Republican clubs in the area and our activists, and get everybody on the same page for the 2022 elections, which we think are going to be big. Secondly, we did want to see the situation at the border up close and talk to some of the people whose lives are being affected by the humanitarian disaster that is our southern border. And that's going to be one of the things I'll be doing while I'm there.
All right. And very interesting you mentioning about, I mean, of course, the issues that you're going to be looking at addressing, but that wave and the anticipated, well, turnout in this election here, some information coming out and postings coming out from the local GOP office in recent weeks here, pointing to some numbers from, well, recent elections, particularly comparing midterm over midterm here, 2022 versus 2018, and among other things, touting a 50% increase in voter turnout on the Republican rolls in this last one, and a 30% drop in Democrat rolls over year over year, as we're pointing out here. So is that the kind of thing you're focusing on? And what do you take away from that and those numbers as they've been put out so far?
Well, I mean, it's even more dramatic than that in some areas. We saw an increase in Republican voters in every single border county, every single one without exception. We saw an increase in 204 of 254 counties, 207 of 254 counties, while Democrat voters decreased in a majority of the counties. In one particular county, Starr County, Texas, on the border by Hidalgo, they had 15 Republican voters 4 years ago, 15, and they had 1,800 this primary. So we are seeing a wave building like we've never seen before, and it's because voters are realizing that Republicans are the party that's going to protect the working class, that's going to protect working class voters, that's going to involve them in their child's education, and that's going to make our schools more responsive to parents' needs and desires. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing the Republican Party quickly becoming the party of parents and working class people and small business owners, while Democrats are becoming the party of the elitists, rich people, and large corporations.
So that in continuing that, I mean, again, the last time we can really point to being talked about border politics, or at least local ones, again, when Governor Greg Abbott was in town talking about red wave building. So this has been something being focused on for a minute now. When it comes to specifics then about efforts in this area or to continue that, I mean, besides, of course, the important, focus on policies that you all have, I mean, when it comes to just offering support to increase, voter turnout, and particularly of the way that you want to see it, what are some of the efforts going on in the local levels, in those counties, and including ours, to, well, have that continue essentially?
Well, we're being involved in many levels. One is candidate recruitment, which we're supporting the county party in recruiting candidates for as many offices as possible, even on the local level. And we recruited more candidates statewide than we ever have before. We're also doing voter outreach, registering voters, trying to get them out to the polls and trying to get them to vote Republican. We've been very active in the El Paso area. Statewide, I don't know the numbers specifically for El Paso, but statewide, we've already hit over 800,000 voters by phone and at their doors. And we have barely even gotten started yet in this election cycle. Also, we're doing a first of its kind election integrity effort where our goal is to staff poll watchers at every single poll in the state of Texas. We saw this have a huge impact in Virginia, where Republicans turned Virginia red and had every single poll in the state staffed. A little bit more challenging in a big state like Texas, but we expect to have a large percentage of our polls staffed. We'd like to get every single one staffed if possible. So that's what we're doing as a party. A lot of it has to do with supporting the El Paso party. A lot of it has to do statewide, but Texas is going to be a big focus even for the National Republican Party.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Republican Party of Texas Chairman Matt Rinaldi. Find out anything more about the efforts we're talking about, the policies and such, and including the release out today, you can visit texasgop.org. That's texasgop.org. And information about the local office, it's epgop.org. So, and all of those all focus and posted up over on our social media as well for easy linking here. So you were mentioning there about election integrity efforts, and of course, a big focus that has been coming out, particularly since the primary and ahead of the primary runoff here, is SB1 and its effect on ballot request rejections, particularly here in this region. We saw quite a jump here due to, among other things, the essential confirmation efforts, the numbers that may have been provided previously not matching with current ones. So when it comes to that issue, what are some of the things that you're talking about or working on?
Well, I think SB1 was a bill that helped us address many instances of election fraud around the state, including in Harris County, probably the most notable one, which resulted in the elections administrator resigning. Without SB1, we wouldn't have gotten that done. Obviously, when you implement any bill, you see what went right, you see what you can improve upon. And I think one thing was the rejections that are due to numbers not matching or legitimate issues with the ballot, you do want rejected. So that shows the bill's working. Of course, if there's something with a person missed the instructions or the instructions were written in too small of a font, so they didn't write it in, that's something you want to remedy next time around. Now, our bill includes, the law that was passed includes the opportunity to call the voter and have them fix their ballot. Which is good. So the voter doesn't just get one shot and they're done. They actually can fix the ballot if there is a mistake. So there are fail safes built into the law, but I think it's working well. I think the SB1 bill law now is working well. There were ballot rejections. The ballots that were rejected that were due to numbers not matching or issues with the integrity of the ballot, I think shows that the law is working. Of course, if ballots were rejected because someone didn't understand the instructions or failed to put the number on there because the print was too small, that's stuff that we need to fix in the future. And of course, if that did happen to somebody, the procedure under the law is to call them, to give them a second opportunity to fix their ballot and ensure that everything is done properly. So I think there are fail-safes built into the law. I think the law is working. I think the law has enabled us to address election irregularities like in the Houston area that resulted in the elections administrator resigning. But, like with any law, we're going to improve it in order to make it easier to vote, harder to cheat going forward, and ensure our elections are safe, secure, and that everybody gets the opportunity to cast a ballot.
On that point, then, I mean, besides the changing of potential font sizes on the forms being sent out with it, what do you think needs to be done for, again, these upcoming elections, of which we have several, technically both planned and already on the ballot here, as well as what do you think the impact will be, particularly as we get towards the midterm?
Well, I think the biggest impact is going to be that Texans should be well reminded that their vote is going to count, because our elections in Texas are safe, are secure, and are even more so because of the effect of SB1. So, we don't have a situation that individuals don't want to cast a ballot because they don't think their vote's going to count, because they don't believe in the integrity of our elections. That isn't the case. That's what this bill did. When you vote, your vote will count, will not be offset by an illegal vote. And SB1 will be implemented and will work to ensure the integrity of our election.
Again, guest right now is Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Any more information about some of the things that he's talking about from the state perspective, texasgop.org, as well as, again, the local office being epgop.org. So we got to take that next break right now. So coming out of the break, we'll be talking more with Matt about some of the policies and some of the very important issues ahead of these elections here. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update. El Paso police have revealed the cause of a serious crash. We first brought you as breaking news yesterday morning. Investigators say 25-year-old Ricardo Phillips was speeding when he crashed into a guardrail. Now, this happened near Piedras and Gateway East. Phillips was thrown off the motorcycle and fell about 25 feet to the road below. He suffered serious injuries and was taken to the hospital. El Paso police say a gun malfunction may have prevented a tragedy in the Cincinnati Entertainment District. Police arrested 22-year-old Christopher Hicks. They say he was involved in a fight at one of the bars early Sunday morning. He's been accused of pulling a gun and firing randomly into a crowd. Luckily, police say his weapon jammed and an officer ran him down across the street. I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 westbound at Yarborough. Watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. An accident has got the right lane blocked on Joe Battle Boulevard southbound south of Montwood at New World Drive. Another crash on Joe Battle southbound south of Vista del Sol at Eschenbrenner Avenue. Bob Hope Drive can be your alternate. And road construction's got the right lane closed on Loop 375 eastbound at Rushing. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Been a pretty cloudy day again for us, thanks to some of that moisture that pushed in. But overnight, we should expect to see some clearing. Temperatures will be a bit on the cool side tonight. However, we do have a continuation of 90-degree temperatures up until the end of the week. We also have our next big wind maker making its way towards us by Friday. That one not only brings us a chance for some wind, but also cooler temperatures.
This report is sponsored by Brakemasters.
Before your day is done, Brakemasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brakemasters shape. Download coupons at Brakemasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brakemasters. We give you an honest break.
Help DEA keep our community safe and healthy by participating in National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. Take action right in your own home by cleaning out your family medicine cabinet of unneeded medications. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. Visit DEATakeback.com. That's DEATakeback.com.
Are you ready for an unparalleled work experience where you see your impact every day? GDIT is hiring bilingual English-Spanish customer service representatives to deliver critical support to the government. $500 sign-on bonus available for select positions. Apply now at gdit.com/El Paso Jobs.
This report is sponsored by General Dynamics Information Technology.
Developed and used by cultures in forested areas, drums served as an early form of communication. Due to the highly ambiguous nature of these rhythms, misinterpretations often occurred, resulting in violence, Thankfully, when we bang the drum now, we're a bit more civilized. Can you hear me now? A bit. We have to hit them hard for this. Beat out your frustrations on our drum.
Do not stop banging that drum.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, joined here again by Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Thanks for sticking around with us here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Happy to talk with you about, the visit that you have pending to town ahead of when we're recording this, but also the issues going along with it. Of course, a lot of focus on the upcoming primary runoffs, obviously, but ultimately the midterm elections coming up here in November. And there's a lot of issues going along with that. Of course, it's not even just statewide, but nationally, there's very much expected to be quite a lot of trouble for the party in power, the Democrats and the current administration, because of a lot of issues, and that's some of the things that you're focusing on. One of the ones that is almost dominating everything even we just talk about in a daily program here is Title 42 and that anticipated end of it here coming up in late May. And the impacts from that, have driven a lot of response here, even just from the state level, but is also very, important to, local voters, local issue talkers, including us here, and something that you all are very focused on as well in the lead up to the midterms, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So when it comes to some of the specifics there, of course, we've seen some interesting state level responses, a lot of things coming out of the governor's mansion on different policies, procedures, even just as of last week here, talking about those individual deals being made with states of Mexico here. So that is one aspect we're looking on at, state level here. But in terms of the overall issue, how are you all talking about it and expecting that impact to come for these midterms?
Well, the border situation right now is a humanitarian disaster. We've seen the impact on drugs, the cartels that have operational control of the border, and we see a Biden administration doing absolutely nothing about this. Between human trafficking, drug trafficking, they seem entirely disinterested in solving the problem at the border. In fact, they're actively encouraging it with the repeal of Title 42, which will encourage even greater amounts of people to flow over the border. The goal of the Republican Party is to stop the flow of illegal immigration over the border and maintain operational control of the border. The Biden administration is not doing it, so Governor Greg Abbott has implemented a plan which looks very promising in that he is trying to apply economic pressure by controlling ports of entry and encourage the border governors in Mexico to enter into agreements with Texas to police the border from their side. And they've entered an agreement with the Chihuahua governor in your area and 2 other states as well so far, and it's only been 2 days. So Governor Abbott is doing something, but in order to completely secure the border, again, we need Republicans in Congress and we need a Republican president.
Not surprised that that's a focus here, though, of course, what we got coming up here with the midterms elections focus mostly on the legislature here. So within border communities in particular, this kind of relating to what you were talking about with the voter turnout change here, I guess there is much anticipated to be a lot of damage coming for the party in power due to, dissatisfaction along these kind of issues here. But again, back to the state level focus, when it comes to, again, these policies here, do you feel that this is the end game, essentially, of Governor Abbott's policies on these enhanced inspections that he has been ordering DPS to do in order to essentially secure these multiple bilateral agreements with these governors in Mexico to kind of implement a sort of well, it's pretty dang close to what had been happening under the previous administration, with the focus on Mexico having kind of reestablished the Guardia Nacional, the Mexican National Guard, to become their own border force, but this on then kind of a complementary state level, or what is your perspective on that?
No, I think that was the goal of Governor Abbott in slowing traffic across the border crossings, and I think you see the plans working right now. The only thing we need to do is make sure that there's follow through on their side. We need to police the agreement. We need to make sure that they do follow through, because again, it won't only be successful unless we can stop the flow over the border and maintain control.
And of course, along with this, and has been some consternation in our area and other parts of here of the impacts on the continuing issues involving supply chain and, of course, inflation here. And so, as we are seeing the impacts of that subside from this current issue, it's still very much one that you all are focusing on statewide and as a national issue as well. And one of the probably more common points that gets brought up, I mean, it can be seen across the board in issues of either products getting smaller but costing the same, or the same amount costing more, the gas pump, all of those here. So when it comes to the Texas party's focus here, how are you all talking about that issue?
Well, I don't think Governor Abbott's policy had an effect yet, because the whole issue was resolved after a week favorably for us. The impacts of inflation right now are killing American families. I mean, some foods, some meats are 30-40% more expensive. We've seen the price of gas go up from $2 a gallon to more than $4 a gallon. It just, families are struggling. They're struggling just to put food on the table and make ends meet. And that inflation is squarely on the federal government right now in the Biden administration. It has to do with, number one, printing loads of money to give away to people to fund COVID shutdowns, for one. Paying people not to work is not free. I mean, they effectively took out an $8 million loan. They gave you $1,400, and then they handed out the rest to big corporations and their friends. That's going to cause inflation. Secondly, with gas prices, Biden has effectively stopped American energy. He's muzzled American energy producers, and you're seeing the results. Unleash American energy and lower gas prices. And we're seeing the combined effects of that right now, and it's killing families.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Any more information about the policies he's talking about, or information about the party, both statewide and locally, statewide, texasgop.org is the website to visit. That's Texas spelled out, GOP.org, or again, local office, EPGOP.org. So we can find out the information there. So getting on the energy supplies issue, we're in an interesting position here to see what differences in the state level that have been coming along with that, being on straddling the area of Texas and New Mexico, and having a lot of people drawn to both of those sets of the energy sector here. So specifically when it comes to Texas, along with the advent of course, the Ukrainian war, we've heard some of the calls coming out from statewide Republicans of Midland, not Moscow, and refocusing on that. So when it comes to those policies and the way that needs to be done, what do you feel needs to be done to actually focus on to galvanize the energy sector here in Texas beyond what has already been done?
Well, I think what you need to do is unleash them and remove regulatory barriers imposed by the federal government to new energy sources. And to get an idea of what Joe Biden's doing and why you're not seeing the investments in fossil fuels that you've seen under the Trump administration, I mean, you can look at Biden ending drilling on federal lands, and people don't realize, because Texas is mostly private land, but a sizable portion of the American West is land owned by the federal government. So this has a huge impact on supply. Ending the Keystone Pipeline, of course, decreases supply, increases prices. And just look at the campaign rhetoric and the rhetoric coming from the Biden administration. At one point, they said oil executives should be put in jail because they're contributing to climate change. Now, think if you're an oil company and the president of the United States is saying you should be put in jail simply for doing what your company does. Do you think anybody's going to invest in your industry? They're going to spend the billions and billions of dollars it takes to prospect for new energy sources? No, they're not going to. And that's why you're seeing energy prices that are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah, referencing there the just to the west of us policies of the Bureau of Land Management, otherwise known as BLM, but in a different way here. And we see that in New Mexico and in points to, the north and west of us here from El Paso. But I guess specifically for Texas, then talking about, unleashing it and removing the regulatory barriers here, are there any specifics that really need to be focused on that is going to be, I guess, part of the party platform as we head into the midterms about effectuating that within the state specifically?
Yes, effectively, it's going to be removing regulatory barriers to new energy sources and fossil fuels and stopping the practice of subsidizing alternative energy sources to fossil fuels in order to incentivize people to use other fuels. It's incredibly wasteful. It's not dependable, as we saw in the blackout. The renewable energy sources should be part of the mix, but the government shouldn't be putting its thumb on the scale because fossil fuels, natural gas, they're more reliable. That the Republican Party of Texas is going to be encouraging the government to get out of the way and to let private companies in Texas and elsewhere produce as much energy as possible so that families can afford to heat their homes, to air condition their homes, and to drive their cars to work.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but of course, there's always more to get to here. Any other issues that you want to mention here as we got a little bit of time left about focuses that you all are going to be working on ahead of this midterm election?
Yeah, I mean, people are seeing the Biden administration affect their everyday lives for the worse in so many different areas. And our goal going into the election is to show people that the GOP has a positive agenda designed to address all those issues. And specifically, we're going to be focusing on border security, on fiscal responsibility, on healthcare freedom. We're going to focus on increasing public safety. We're going to increase on a strong national defense. And finally, strong schools and ending the woke nonsense that you see creeping into every single part of American culture and supporting families.
I'm sure we'll be having a lot further conversation on all of those points here. But again, for right now, our guest has been Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Again, want to find out any more information about him, texasgop.org, and of course, the statewide efforts. And then locally, epgop.org is the website to visit there for the local Republican Party. So, Matt, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about these issues, how it's being addressed and talked about at the state level and the organization along with it. And of course, your impending visit here to the area to discuss this even further and visit and talk about some of these issues, but doing that with us here today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Again, thanks to Matt for speaking with us about that ahead of his visit. That's going on, well, more or less now, including some news conferences about some of the activities and, the issues that he is talking about here. So I'm sure we'll talk further about all of these things, but interesting to get this perspective on what statewide and how that then drills down locally the Republican Party will be focused on. Of course, the midterms elections, quite the focus now, so I'm sure we'll see all those issues discussed right there come up, in spades even further here. But that's going to lead us to taking that next break of the hour here right now. And along with that, we'll go ahead and open up that phone line as we do usually during this point of the show. So if you're wanting to call in, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Tell us what you think, or what you think should be done, or anything in between here. So back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for a stalled vehicle on I-10 eastbound at Thorne that's slowing traffic. I-10 westbound from Rustler to Thorne. It's stop-and-go traffic with 5-minute delays. An injury accident with medical crew on the scene at Donovan and Sunland Park, and an injury accident still being worked on Montana Avenue eastbound before Yarborough at Limerick. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has your workspace covered with functional furniture and organizational items curated by Staples Work-From-Home Style Squad. This week, save up to $100 on select chairs. In-store only, offer ends 4/30, limit 2. Explore solutions for your workspace at Staples, the working and learning store.
This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you, El Paso and surrounding areas, for helping us be El Paso's #1 dealer in new Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram sales in March. As a gesture of our gratitude, we've extended all our Ram Truck Month deals, like 0 down, 0% interest for 72 months and no payments for 90 days.
Buy now and save thousands on a huge inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. All new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 0 APR for 72 months. 0 payments for 90 days. We've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms, even if your credit is less than perfect. And we want your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. All select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Hi, Phil Swift here for the Flex Seal family of products. You know, there's a lot of ways to protect your home. You could dig a moat. You could bubble wrap it. Or you could train a pack of wolves to protect it. But the best way is with the Flex Seal family of products. So when you need to patch, bond, seal, repair, and stop leaks fast, get the Flex Seal family of products. Available at flexsealproducts.com and fine retailers.
Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly during this point in the program. We do have those phone lines open now. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot to get into here. Again, thank you to our guest from earlier this hour, Matt Rinaldi, chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. We did that in advance of his visit to town, happening right now, more or less. And honestly, I am encouraged, even if it is more just about the attention being paid to this region here. I mean, we've had Governor Greg Abbott in and out of town a few times, even within the last year. Probably more than that I'm forgetting at least one of, I feel like. But, I mean, when we have that, when we are having statewide officials come to town, I mean, let's just be honest. We are not usually this focused upon when it comes to statewide elections. I mean, sure, there is always the, yeah, well, we'd love to have your vote kind of thing here. And again, that point that was kind of made during Abbott's last campaign visit, because the last time he was here was for that specific luncheon, but his last true campaign visit, okay, even if there's the argument to be made about everything as a campaign these days, I mean, take my point here that when he was specifically on the campaign trail versus addressing a specific, group that he was invited to speak at, I mean, the only real specific thing he said about the region was about the red wave that they're anticipating. And I mean, there is still mounting, evidence behind that. And again, that image that has actually come out from the local Republican Party office about the change in vote amounts here, I mean, it is an increase being looked at year over year when it comes to the local Republican voters versus Democrat, though Democrat voters still outnumber them by a sizable amount here. So that's not necessarily something to say that, it's been fixed if you're of that persuasion on this issue. But again, it's interesting to me, given and just in terms of in my career and reporting, we've gone from the time when you couldn't pay a governor to come out here and talk about the issues here, or making just some very strange comments about the nature of what's happening in the borderland region. Again, bombs on the streets of El Paso is never going to leave me whenever we're talking about, the Rick Perry era, among other things. So that disconnect seems to have been, at least a little bit of a focus here. And if this truly becomes an area that is seen as, I don't know, politically valuable to the rest of the state, who knows what could actually then happen that way. I mean, frankly, El Paso, the borderland region, has long languished when it comes to most statewide things. It's one of the reasons that we've done the focus as we have done on, the state delegation going to the state house to help bring, whatever legislation can affect the borderland region to the forefront. But, I mean, I don't know. Only time will tell. And if it really only stops after this midterm election, I guess we'll have our answer here. But I find it encouraging. Anytime that we're getting paid a little bit more attention to, I stand up and pay attention myself, because what is being talked about it and exactly what value others are seeing in the region, and then how that's going to affect their decision making towards us, particularly when we're talking about, some interesting statewide officials here. I mean, there's not even usually been that much campaigning or statewide expenditures in our area. That has been changing a little bit slowly over the past few years. Interesting comments coming out about all of this here. Maria Coleman saying, I would prefer to hear more of a definitive plan on immigration. Both parties have kicked this can down the alley for too long. The Republican Party should put more effort into attracting young voters. Veronica Escobar was at UTEP today to showcase her platform. Independent voters also need to be included. They will possibly swing the vote in the next election. That's very, very true. And part of the reason we won't talk with parties as we do, I mean, again, this was on the occasion of Chairman Rinaldi's visit here, but we talk about this because knowing what's on the ballot, knowing the policies being talked back and forth, I find that pretty key. And I'll be honest, I've had some people in my own life, otherwise not exactly undecided voters, but uninformed, because I think we have more uninvolved voters, that we know that to be true, but also people who are like, yeah, I vote this way just because I always have, kind of reasoning. And even if it doesn't necessarily sway them one way or the other, they then have, a level of conviction of, oh no, I'm definitely voting now because of these issues. And I find that important. I think that's part of the way we're going to be able to get, more people involved in the polls. And really, if getting more people statewide out here and talking with the local populace, that's what's going to lead to it, if that's important to you, because seeing more political value here is about the only reason we're going to keep this going here. So again, appreciate the visit and appreciate the talk with him, but we'll keep talking about these issues, and that's going to lead us in here to the next hour right now. So going into the next hour, we of course have those phone lines open, and we'll take some more of those comments and calls on the line here. So if you're wanting to get on the line ahead of the top of the next hour, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned after the top of the hour news break. See you then.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Got a crash on the left transition ramp from the 10 Gateway West to northbound Loop 375. That ramp is blocked because of a crash. I-10 eastbound from Joe Battle out to Eastlake. That's a 5-minute delay with stop-and-go traffic. I-10 eastbound at Thorne. Watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. And that injury accident on Montana Avenue has been there for a while, but police are still working it eastbound before Global Reach. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
The new true crime podcast, White Eagle, investigates one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history. The robbery of over $7 million from an armored car warehouse. Was the ringleader a criminal mastermind, or was he a political pawn in a Cold War operation?
For some folks, they were boogeymen. They were, bandits hidden in the mountains and shadowy figures. For others, they were heroes.
Listen to White Eagle on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, spring is here, and the warmer weather means you've got a lot more going on. Don't let COVID get in the way of any of it. COVID vaccines offer the strongest possible protection now and from long-term side effects in the future. Protect yourself and your plans. We can do this. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. That's vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. This spring, you can share your own observations about nature with scientists and play a critical role in scientific discovery by adding to their data collection. Discover more about citizen science programs such as monitoring weather, observing plants and animals, and more. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com. News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Johnny Depp says he's waited a long time to finally address allegations that he abused his ex-wife Amber Heard. The actor said he didn't want anyone to believe that he had lied to them and that he prides himself in his honesty. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki appears to be hinting that the Department of Justice will appeal a federal judge's decision to strike down the mask mandate on planes and other forms of public transportation.
We obviously feel confident in our authorities here, given we put the mask mandate in place and asked for 15 additional days to evaluate data based on public health information.
The judge ruled that an extension of the mandate was unconstitutional because the CDC violated administrative law. While speaking with reporters, Psaki explained the process to review the ruling will take a couple of days. The number of migrants trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border is reaching its highest level in 20 years. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says agents stopped migrants from crossing the border more than 221,000 times during the month of March. They say that was an increase of 33% from February. The agency has reported the number of migrant encounters going up nearly every month since President Biden took office. The heads of 26 states are banding together in what's being called the American Governor's Border Strike Force. Arizona Republican Governor Doug Ducey detailed the new coalition.
Today, we are announcing the American Governor's Border Strike Force. This is a majority of America's governors stepping up to do what the Biden administration refuses to do.
The goal, they say, is to share intelligence and invest in analysis as a way to stop human and drug smuggling. Millions with student loans will be one step closer to debt forgiveness after changes the U.S. Department of Education plans to make to the lending system. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Millions of Americans are opting out of the in-person economy as COVID restrictions subside, and that could put more pressure on the labor market.
It could also accelerate U.S. plans to quell demand. An additional 431,000 jobs being added last month gave the job market cause for optimism that hiring was picking up pace. But findings from the recent long social distancing study suggest the labor market will remain tight, putting upward pressure on wages and prices even as interest rates rise. The team behind the study estimates that the U.S. workforce is still missing about 3.5 million workers. That is the number of people that would have made up the labor force if the economy had continued to expand at its pre-pandemic pace. I'm Mike Bauer.
The NBA is fining Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving $50,000 for breaking the league's code of conduct. Irving was caught multiple times flashing his middle finger at Boston Celtics fans during the team's opening game of their playoff series Sunday. After the game, Irving talked about receiving taunts from fans of his former team. One of the Democrats running for Florida governor is using a Tampa apartment complex to talk about her plan to deal with affordable housing.
Nikki Fried, currently state agriculture commissioner, says landlords are taking advantage of renters in Florida, and she wants to go after what she calls price gouging.
As governor, on day one, I will immediately direct the Attorney General to target predatory landlords who could increase rents well beyond the rate of inflation.
If elected, Fried also promises to veto any bills that tap into a state affordable housing fund. The candidate for the Democratic nomination appeared at a subsidized apartment complex in Tampa, where residents claim they're suffering retaliation for complaining about unsafe conditions. I'm Gordon Bird.
SeaWorld Orlando is teasing a potential new thrill ride heading to the park. Photos of what appeared to be sections of roller coaster tracks strapped to a flatbed trailer were posted to the park's Twitter account. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Fun. That's fun. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is the leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screenforlife for more information.
Keepers Las Cruces is now hiring. Call 575-521-4400.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, groan-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Of course, we have got ourselves on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, which, of course, you can leave your talkback messages through. So anytime that you're on the News Radio 690 KTSM feed, listening to it, as long as you can hear it through the app, you're in the right place. There'll be a little button next to it, a little red microphone, a little red circular button should show up that way in most of the different apps. I've got Android, so if you're looking at it on your tablet or your mobile device, should show up the same way, even if it is Apple or any other system there. But you can leave us a message day or night that way. Plus, of course, the pound 250 system we've still got up. We got at least one call coming in that way here today. But, of course, we got that phone line open as well. So that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Plus all of those comments that we do love so much coming in over on the social media, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. So again, a lot of ways to interact with the show, add on your 2 cents. A lot of stuff we're adding today. Again, border security, kind of that focus going to be up for the foreseeable future, but a whole lot more going on than that. And again, particularly on the occasion of a Republican Party of Texas Chairman Matt Rinaldi in town. So that is a news conference actually just wrapped up over there at the Republican Party headquarters. They're posting that online as we're in the middle of this show here. So probably more response from, well, what he saw during his tour in town in the coming days here. But again, thanks to him for speaking with us ahead of that actual visit and some of his expectations. And again, those statewide issues that will, as we are in the kind of midst of the wrap-up of the primary process and then going to be shifting to, of course, the general election process coming later in November. I mean, these issues aren't just going to evaporate, but will continue to evolve, certainly. Among other things, I mean, when we're talking about the difference between your primary voting, when you are very much trying to appeal to your party's base, versus the shift that we are going to and are pretty much in the middle of shifting to when it comes to, well, that general election, as Maria in the comment we had before the break here, those independent voters, those voters not terrifically committed to one party or the other, or any party for that matter, looking at, okay, who am I actually going to cast my ballot for in order for, who do I think will succeed, or one that I support the platform most of. Those are going to be some of the critical points here. So that's reason, among other things, why we talk about this and bring up those points here. Some interesting comments that came in the middle of this. John Brazelton with a very interesting, spicy-ish comment saying that New Mexico is underpopulated, restrict all illegals to remain inside New Mexico state borders here. So turning New Mexico into a modern-day, like, Georgia prison colony, if you want to go back to the colonial era. Interesting concept there, though I'm sure New Mexicans would have some interesting opinions on that as a policy here. And Carol Rank saying, I thought Vice President Harris was going to take on the border issue. Where is she? Maybe stop doing photo shoots with the Obamas and do your job. She should be fired just like any other job if you fail to do your work here. I mean, the part of, I think, bringing on Harris as vice president, well, was its own political calculation, among other things. And, well, if you feel that there's been followed through with or not, well, your own prerogative there. But we also got calls coming in on the line here, a lot more comments coming on, and some interesting things, such as also Flaco Jimenez saying Biden has financed the war on Ukraine. Blood is on his hands. Don't think I'm totally going to follow you on that one, but also Calvin Williams saying Kurt Russell in Escape from New Mexico. Yeah, that's probably a little bit closer to a better modern day interpretation here, but let's go back to those calls on the line again. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM if you want to add your 2 cents on these issues or any of the other things affecting us here in the borderland. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday we spoke about the money, the waste of our taxpayer dollar on illegal immigrants, but we didn't talk about their debt to the cartels. And I was thinking a constant theme that these illegal immigrants have is that they leave their countries for economic and safety reasons. But when they get here, the first thing they have to do is get a job and then start sending their money back to the cartels. So they're basically living here with the cartel's foot at their throat, and they become hostages to the cartels because their families are threatened, and they're threatened unless they pay back that money. So it's like one bad situation to another. But another thing we have to consider is how valuable are illegal immigrants to the cartel? Well, we just have to look at the massacre that took place in Juarez yesterday. 6 people were killed. And it's my understanding that the shootout took place in a hotbed. It's considered a hotbed for smuggling. So President Biden has opened the floodgates to millions and millions of dollars to the cartels, and they're not going to let that money go. That's just, we are their cash cow under this administration. And look what happened on April of this year, when President Obrador could have done this any time during the 4 years that President Trump was in office. Last April, which we're just finding out now, and I'm wondering why the Biden administration didn't mention this to us, why we don't know about it. But they're reporting that last April, President Obrador disbanded it's called a Sensitive Investigative Unit. And they worked in conjunction with our DEA. And their applicants to their DEA were brought to the U.S. and they were trained in Quantico. But that unit was closed down in 2021, April of 2021. And they stated that Obrador told the Biden administration that they were disbanding the unit. So Biden knows about this, and he knows that, 205,000 of our citizens were killed with fentanyl, and we're just finding this out today. And guess where Anthony Blinken and Mayorkas are today? In Panama. And what are they doing? They're meeting with 20 other countries to see if they can get collaboration amongst the countries so that not one particular country can be burdened with all the illegal immigrants coming in, from the Latin American countries, South America, and everywhere else. The thing that I found interesting in this article was that they were saying that 6 million people have left Venezuela because of the economic and political situation there. And Colombia has taken some of them. But I'm thinking, okay, Colombia couldn't take 6 million. Heaven knows how many are here. Not only are we taking the Venezuelans that are not staying in Colombia, and I think there's probably very few, but the Colombians are leaving Colombia.
Yep.
So this is a domino effect. And now Blinken and Mayorkas are trying to find a solution a few weeks before they're supposed to lift Title 42. These people are incompetent. And like I said, they don't have a plan for anything they're going to do for the consequences of their policies. And we suffer for it. I mean, do they really think in a few short weeks they can get these nations to commit to something when we have hundreds of thousands already coming through Mexico into the U.S.? How are they going to stop that flow? This is ludicrous. I mean, 221,000 illegal immigrants were apprehended last month. This illegal immigrant increase is increasing exponentially since Biden took office. And they're waiting 2-3 weeks before they lift the last semblance of any sanity or anything that we have at the border. So my question is, did our congresswoman know about this unit being disbanded in Mexico? Did the president know? Does she know where Blinken and Mayorkas are now? Do we have a right to know that? There's just so many questions and so many reasons why we need to vote out our congresswoman and anybody who supports this administration's policies, and that includes Samaniego, which now we know he does. El Paso, we need to take action. We need to move, get off our comfortable sofa like I did in 2008. I always thought things would be fine in the United States of America. We can't think that. And I was wrong when I thought that. And I hope that everybody listening changes their minds about being comfortable and not feeling uncomfortable, because that's how we're going to change things. Being uncomfortable and being bold, not rude, but just bold with what we see, bold with what we know needs to be done and to save our country. We need to gather up.
There's a phrase that I've come across recently to your last sentiment there. I mean, there's a lot more I talked about with everything else you said, but to your last point there's a phrase I've come across recently that has been influencing the way I think about these things, and it's that the people who want to win will always defeat those that just want to be left alone. And in the political context specifically here, but I mean, I hadn't heard it put that way until recently, but the idea of that I think there's a whole lot of people that just don't care, particularly just, again, right in our area. Obviously, a whole lot of people that either don't care or can't be bothered enough to deal with it. I mean, that you look at our voter turnouts from any election, and that proves it out here. But again, I think that proving to people that getting involved with this is not just a nice thing to do, but rather a necessity if you're wanting things to change. Again, to refer again to the late, great Casey Kasem, if you think things could be better, make sure you're registered to vote right now. Because and then just that disconnect, that, I mean, I'm going to harp on that until it's fixed, so probably forever here. But I mean, even with the other things you're talking about, that disbanding, I had heard about that, but the way you're putting it there is also very important here of that unit here. And actually, someone else posting a comment as well. Michael Pat is also pointing out, just related here, that you have the drug take-back day coming up here towards the end of the month here, so that's important. But I mean, even beyond that, you actually brought up something that was interesting, because I remember back during, the 2016 election, the lead up to it, when we were looking at, I mean, the policies being suggested about by then the pre-Trump administration, including the, getting Mexico to pay for the wall. And what you mentioned there reminded me of something of a theory that had been put forth by a person that I valued the opinion on of that point, and still do, of how that could potentially actually be done. And those payments to Mexico, also known as remittances, those are not immune to policy or to essentially interdiction, if we really want to talk about it, because I mean, that is financial instruments going across national borders. And sure, there are more apps and things that may be avoiding regulation for the most part, but those remittances specifically could be targeted here. So I'm not aware of a total amount of this kind of essentially digital hostage taking, the kind of way you're describing it here. I mean, the cartels previously have been very much interested in, okay, we are going to traffic you, keep your passports, essentially have you slave labor, all that, and tried and tested stuff for themselves here. But I don't doubt that it's happening in some places, and probably in increasing ways, because I mean, if you could be making that much more money with that much less time and investment and having to guard people, all that stuff here, because they got someone, back on the hook, back in the old country, so to speak, it makes a lot of sense here. So it does make me wonder if that should be revisited, even outside of a, Trump administration context here, this idea of looking at the remittances, because, I mean, this payments that are being sent back to Mexico, that would be and really hit, as much as I have concerns about AMLO that we'll have to get into more here in a bit here, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, and him maybe going in the direction of, that former Venezuelan leader, among other things here. But that, it just comes to mind as something that was brought up there and kind of has been in the back of my mind this whole time of something that maybe should be looked at in terms of, well, if Mexico and governments of there are not wanting to play ball, or even security implications like you bring up here, that should be probably looked at a lot more, well, strongly and with purpose.
What would be interesting to know is if Texas can withhold or have a surcharge on the money that people are sending into Mexico. Mm-hmm. I don't know that Texas has the authority to do that, but that would be something Governor Abbott should look into. Let's keep a portion of that, or tax them higher, or whatever, any transactions at the banks. So we need to, look at every avenue to try and minimize. I don't know if there's a possibility, because they're making billions. They're not going to use a few millions,
right,
and notice it. So, well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
Absolutely. Here. Thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. You have a good one.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how much, again, Texas will be able to do it, but I mean, if there's some kind of plan being looked at federally, maybe that could be worked into it. But tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. We've got a lot more comments coming in from all of this here. So we'll get into that and more, and get to more calls in the line. Again, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. In all these issues, something you got to do is make sure you take care of yourself. And one of the things that I take the time to do, and make sure I do it pretty regularly here, is the appearance here. Sure, we've got the whole video that I put up, but even then, taking some pride in your appearance and taking the time to take care of yourself can do wonders for you. Most specifically, the place I trust and the official hair and beard sponsor of the show is that of Gentleman's Republic, local company. You know I love talking about local and supporting local, but also it's got to be good for me to support it even further on and keep going back to it. So you can find them online at gentsrepublic.com, because, of course, everyone deserves to get treated like a king for a day here. And, of course, their haircuts plus beard grooming plus body care, I mean, it establishes and combines their arts of barbering with, again, your favorite spa and salon, and even your favorite watering hole. Go in there, have a drink poured from you, and settle in for, well, a little bit of quality time with yourself and the services they provide here. Plus, don't forget about, well, their prom packages, because it is that season here. I know I've been seeing people out and about, and you want to look good there. So whether it is for yourself, the important man in your life, or the young man in your life, you definitely want to give them a call by calling now to set your appointment at 915-532-3000. That's 915-532-3000. Ask about their free bow tie with their prom packages, or find them online at gentsrepublic.com. That's GENTSRepublic.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Piedras, stalled vehicles blocking the right shoulder, stay left. Airway Boulevard at Boeing, an accident there with El Paso Fire on the scene. Red, north of West Wind, a crash at Red and Marble Canyon. You could use Wrestler or High Ridge as your alternates there. And an injury accident, Donovan at Sunland Park. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
It's a grand in your hand.
$1,000.
No NFTs or ESGs. It's $1,000 straight to you.
That is awesome.
Listen every hour from 9 through 5 weekdays for your chance to win.
A grand in your hand is brought to you by Approved Auto. Ride out in your new ride in less than an hour. Get payments as low as $159 a month. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. If you got your license and you got a job, they smell a deal. The deals are sweeter at Approved Auto, 8498 Alameda.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Print and Marketing Services helps small businesses print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 5/28. Visit staples.com/signage for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Hi, Phil Swift here. When that next storm is barreling down, get prepared with the Flex Seal family of products. Floods can destroy your home. Push Flex base deep into cracks and holes to help prevent flooding. Seal doors and windows, patch leaky roofs and downspouts. Remember, when that storm is coming your way, keep your family safe and dry. Be prepared with the Flex Seal family of products. Available at flexsealproducts.com and fine retailers.
Cards issued by Celtic Bank, member FDIC. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's credit cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 3.3% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/join. Ramp.com/join. ramp.com/join.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show here. We got a lot of comments coming in here as well, some including about early voting coming up here. Let me double check on that here because, honestly, in all our talk about the issues on the elections, this may have stuck up on me a little bit here. So let me confirm that for you, John. But among other things being posted here, John saying, pray for the 6 months to go by quickly. The midterm elections can't get here fast enough. I mean, yeah, we got a lot that we'll be getting to. And John was asking, early voting starts next Tuesday. Yes, April 25th. So just to keep it clear, this upcoming election, this is the uniform and special election. So essentially for our area, what that's going to mean is, well, those runoff issues. So whether you're on the ballot, you're looking at also the primary runoff election going to be coming up a little bit later here. That one, early voting is going to be May 16th. So this uniform and special election here, again, what's going to be on the ballot there are the water improvement districts, City of San Elizario, Town of Anthony, and for everyone in, well, most listening area, anyone on the Texas side of things, those Texas state propositions, again, when we're talking about, well, actually those Proposition 1 and Proposition 2 that are dealing with, well, taxes and exemptions from it, kind of important with the last stuff we have here and been talking about with, well, property taxes and all that good stuff here. So again, check out epcountyvotes.com for that. A lot of links being posted up on some of the articles and stories. Another reason that if you can do so safely, if you're in your car, don't touch that phone. But if you can, you're the passenger in the car, or you're able to, well, be not in a moving vehicle, you can also go and see the comments and the links being posted up onto social media, primarily facebook.com/Talk El Paso. But of course, we also got that phone line going right now. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Mike on the west side here with us right now. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm piggybacking a little bit on Barbara's comments about the disbandment of the SIU unit in Mexico. This unit was extraordinarily successful. But this is the second step in Obrador's kind of policy to bring Mexico as a fully fledged narco state. Back in 2020, after Biden was elected, Obrador started restricting DEA's activities in terms of collecting intelligence and sharing it with Mexico. That everything they had to do had to go through certain individuals, non-trusted individuals in Mexico, in order, of course, to see what was going on with DEA and these SIU units. And so this could not be tolerated. And in conjunction with that is you have all this drug trafficking, which is, I think, the first source of income for the Mexican government. And Barbara mentioned remittances, and I think that's the third source of income. So that's always been a political hot potato in terms of taxing them on the U.S. side because it supplies so much money to Mexico. But on top of that, you have the flood of drugs coming into the United States, which is being facilitated by Biden's open border policies. And then furthermore, Fentanyl, which is the big problem, which has
Oh, yeah.
caused over 100,000 overdose just in the past year, has always been what's called a Schedule 1 drug, which is which is a drug that has no medical value, like heroin. And it's been scheduled since 2018, ever since it appeared on the market, so to speak. But for the first time, Democrats this past March blocked extending fentanyl as a Schedule 1 drug. And so basically meant making fentanyl legal. And a lot of people are unaware of that. But Democrats blocking the scheduling of fentanyl and its analogs is making fentanyl legal.
Right.
A drug that's killing over 100,000 people, mostly young people, a year.
Those analogs very important as well, because we've seen that kind of a whack-a-mole game being played legislatively for years with some other things like spice is the one I'm most aware of. Nowhere near the level of severity of fentanyl, but it has its own very serious implications, particularly on young people. And of course, fentanyl, given its lethality and in very small doses, is of very much concern here. So the lack of action on that is concerning in its own right, but I guess I'm not surprised at that level of inaction, given the difficulty of legislating these in the past, that some are unwilling to, well, essentially extend their hand to it, to get slapped down, essentially from the scientific standpoint. But I mean, that aside, yeah, it's important. And even then, the concerns, I mean, this directly affects our area, so I'm willing to delve into it a little bit here. The concerns about AMLO, and essentially, I mean, it's been brought back up to my attention that there were some political observers on his election back in 2018 that they're worried that they were going to set up essentially a Hugo Chavez Part 2 with AMLO, and the way he has broken a lot of his promises, including on things like nationalization, almost expropriation of some industries apparent within the country, including his talk now about, well, those rare earth metals, lithium, etc. And so there's a lot of concern about political stability in Mexico writ large, but also, of course, their level of interaction with the cartels. It was pointed out to me that there's been more than a little bit of funny business on the terms of, well, political assassinations, and how they just don't seem to quite be happening to, well, his party, the Morena party.
Absolutely. And he promised to work with the cartels with hugs instead of bullets.
So that's, I mean, there's a lot of concern there, and something I kind of keep a very wary eye on. And as soon as it starts affecting us here, something we definitely bring up. But I mean, all of these things, I mean, the remittances, I think, would be an interesting avenue to go after, because even if it's just affecting, general population income and, families back in Mexico, but even if it starts affecting cartel issues, well, that's where we could start seeing, well, maybe some changes and or flare-ups. But again, the political situation in Mexico remains very volatile. Both the PAN and the PRI both saying that they actually managed to defeat some of on a rare Easter Day vote in Mexico, which is not that common. Some of his most recent agenda items here. So, well, that's something to keep an eye on for those willing to pay attention to more worldly events.
Another thing is that the Biden administration is also looking at closing many of the DEA's foreign offices, of which there are 68 offices in 68 foreign countries that have over 100 and some offices. And all these offices have been extraordinarily effective. But the Biden administration is looking at closing these offices, which would then limit our ability to work with host country counterparts in sharing intelligence and interdicting illegal smuggling organizations and shipments of drugs. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what the Biden administration's ideology is in terms of illegal drugs and the effects on the people of the country.
As with all of these issues we're talking about lately, I would love comprehensive solutions to be put forth and put in place more accurately, but it does seem very one-sided. Among other things, I know that, of course, the talk from this administration has been on, compassionate use programs, harm reduction, some of which have merit, but that being the only aspect of it is concerning, to say the least.
Yep. Well, thank you for taking my call, Andrew. Have a good show.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you have a good one there. Appreciate the call there. I mean, a lot more got to get into. We are on the cusp of that next break right now. I know we got more calls in the line, and we'll get to more here in short order here. So if you wanted to call in during the show, again, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We'll be back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Paso's News Radio, 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The city of El Paso has stated masks are no longer required at the El Paso International Airport or aboard Sun Metro buses. The updated guidance comes after a federal judge voided the national mask mandate covering airplanes and other public transportation forms as exceeding the authority of U.S. health officials. City officials stated today it adheres to federal policy regarding face masks. And an El Paso man has been convicted of murder and sentenced for killing a 19-year-old during a drug deal. A jury convicted 22-year-old Zachary Carter of murder today. A judge sentenced him to 23 years and imposed a $10,000 fine. Carter murdered Joseph Jimenez at a home on Birdsong during a drug deal in February of 2020. The prosecuting attorney said the drug deal was over $20 of marijuana. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Piedras, stalled vehicles blocking the right shoulder, stay left. Airway Boulevard at Boeing, an accident there with El Paso Fire on the scene. Red, north of West Wind, a crash at Red and Marble Canyon. You could use Wrestler or High Ridge as your alternates there. And an injury accident, Donovan at Sunland Park. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Been a pretty cloudy day again for us, thanks to some of that moisture that pushed in. But overnight, we should expect to see some clearing. Temperatures will be a bit on the cool side tonight. However, we do have a continuation of 90-degree temperatures up until the end of the week. We also have our next big wind maker making its way towards us by Friday. That one not only brings us a chance for some wind, but also cooler temperatures.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Springfest is on at Lowe's. And right now, get $100 off select Ego self-propelled lawnmowers. Lowe's, home to any possibility. Selection varies by location while supplies last. Valid 4/14/22 through 4/20/22.
I'm Katherine Townsend, host of the true crime podcast Hell and Gone. In October 2015, 18-year-old Ebby Stepwick vanished without a trace.
And then the fact that they found her phone in her car, her wallet, her keys in her car, that right there tells me someone planned this.
I'm back in Arkansas, investigating what really happened to her. iHeartRadio is #1 for podcasts, and it's easy to see why. Listen to Hell and Gone on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Help DEA keep our community safe and healthy by participating in National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. Take action right in your own home by cleaning out your family medicine cabinet of unneeded medications. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. Visit DEATakeback.com. That's DEATakeback.com.
Wendy's knows a better breakfast starts with a better biscuit. That's why you can get a hot and buttery Wendy's breakfast biscuit with bacon or sausage, fresh cracked egg and cheese for just $1. Get your Wendy's Buck Biscuit Sandwich today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's. This report is sponsored by Wendy's Breakfast Biscuit Sandwich. Just $1.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, going a little bit long in some of these segments here, but we'll get to what we can before the end of the program here. If you want to try to squeeze in, the number to call 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Also got a lot of comments going on over on social media. Maria Kalman, RJ, John Brazelton, Barbara Carrasco, Michael Perez, and more tuning in, chiming in. Carol Rank a little bit earlier, Calvin Williams. So if you really wanted to, that's one of the better ways. Flaco Jimenez before that. One of the better ways to, join in on the conversation regardless of what we got going on with the calls or not here. And just to clarify here, there may have been a little bit of confusion about some of these elections dates coming up here, which I don't totally blame y'all, because we've got 2 coming up in May. Just clarify, we have 2 elections coming up in May on completely separate dates. We do have the primary runoff, and that is actually Election Day, going to be Tuesday, May 24th, and the early voting period there, May 16th. Entirely ahead of that, we are going to be having that uniform and special election, as it's called, a few specific areas having some extra stuff on their ballot, but otherwise for the entire state of Texas, they are going to have those 2 constitutional amendments going on. So that election day going to be Saturday, May 7th, with the early voting period Monday, April 25th. So this coming Monday here through Tuesday, May 3rd. So 2 completely separate elections. Anyone say election fatigue at all here? But again, just keep those in mind. Any question about that, epcountyvotes.com. You can find all those dates laid out. So it would be a good time to make sure you're registered to vote, particularly ahead of then the midterm elections coming up in November. So just keep it straight, keep it in mind here, and make sure you know what the right thing to do is here with these elections here. So let's go back to those phone calls right now. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. This fentanyl thing,
Mm-hmm.
you got them all worked up about fentanyl. Well, just say no. And, how about, you want to talk about gateway drugs, tobacco, and alcohol? Why not make them illegal and prohibited if they're so concerned about gateway drugs and people's health and well-being, and especially that of young people? And then why does Greg Abbott, since he's supposedly stepping up to the plate to do the job that I guess the federal government and Biden can't do, by putting guys along the border and these other moves that he has, well, why doesn't he finish the job that Trump really never started and go do an audit of all these industries that we know have long, long histories of hiring elite? Construction, agriculture, food processing, leisure services. Why doesn't he do that? Now, El Paso Electric's profits, I saw increase 87.4% in 2021, at $146 million under the new ownership of J.P. Morgan. So there's a monopolist there for you, and they want almost a $42 million rate increase out of El Paso. That would represent 29% of that $146 million profit that they made last year, up 87.4%. Sounds like gouging to me. There's your rapacious capitalist, and that's what's happened when you don't regulate these people, adequately. Energy company profits soared in 2021, along with energy prices. I wonder if there's a relationship there. In reality, there's really not that much competition in the major industries in this country. I'm talking about energy, pharmaceuticals, banking, insurance, utilities that we just talked about, telecom. And historically, the Republican Party has been essentially a capitalist tool. Steve Forbes calls his magazine that the capitalist tool. And another example of that is here you have the GOP voting against the government negotiating drug prices to bring the prices down. Uncle Sam has a lot of people under his roof, all the veterans that have retired, people under Medicare. If we could buy those drugs as a, together as a, all together as a group, then it should bring the prices down. We're the only country that allows the pharmaceutical industry to do all these stupid commercials all day and all night long. And so that people say, oh, I think I've got that stuff. And then they run down to the doctor and say, doctor, I think I got this stuff. You should give me this stuff. They're steering what happens. And guess who pays for those commercials, and those exorbitant profits of the pharmaceutical industry. That's why we need adequate government regulation of these industries, and perhaps some trust busting, like in the old days of Teddy Roosevelt, who started that. But we went away from that, and here you got a few companies monopolizing very basic industries.
I mean, yeah, the idea of monopolistic competition is not one you're gonna find me particularly in favor of because of the issues that it engenders. And of course, I mean, telecoms is one that I've been thinking of because we're actually fairly lucky, believe it or not, to live in an area that has at least a couple of companies dealing with it. And while we got some of these ideas, I mean, I know Elon Musk has been in the news for other reasons, but his whole, space-based internet thing is an interesting way to maybe innovate the way around that here, but I digress entirely. It's interesting you say that both the need for regulation and the idea that regulation doesn't do it at all. And frankly, when it comes to fentanyl, I know that you're doing a dig at the previous, the DARE program, among other things, just say no. But the issue here, particularly with fentanyl, is that there's people who don't even know they're taking fentanyl because it's not even just a, street drug. Frankly, I don't know of anyone who'd be like, hey, man, you want to hit a fentanyl? Because that's just a longer way of saying death sentence, but what's being used in counterfeit pharmaceuticals, which is why, as we've talked about previously, the idea of having more resources available out there for people to use and have available, in the police force locally, among other things, is probably pretty important, because even people who don't even know they've been exposed to it can end up dying from it. And yeah, it has. I think someone else said there was actually some more deaths being called in this country last year by that Maria Coleman, saying that, yeah, we have lost more people in 1 year in this country to fentanyl than the war in Ukraine has caused here. And again, it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, but still, it's over 100,000, according to the CDC, for the data, the last amount, 12-month period ending November of 2021, 102,568 deaths. So it's a huge issue. And sure, I mean, the way Texas is tackling things here, really the answer would be they should be doing all of these things. But we're also in election season, so I'm not surprised there's going to be the focus is that they are here. But really, this is something that needs to be continue to be focused on. And also, the way we mitigate the harms as much as we can on this end is still important, because, again, the fact that you might not even know. I mean, we've heard about law enforcement officers who, in doing routine inspections of things, end up being essentially exposed to an otherwise lethal amount. So that is why, among other things, I think it's important to keep focusing on this here and make sure that this doesn't fall by the wayside. Absolutely here. Some interesting conversations here. Michael Petta saying that fentanyl will be used as a filler in illegal pills as well as in heroin and cocaine, because, yeah, it does. If you want to boost up its effect with making it cheaper, it's important here. James Bernardo with an interesting comment here saying decriminalize all drugs for hurting people or taking their stuff. That's a crime. Taxation is theft. And the most dangerous thing about cannabis is getting beat up by cops and being thrown in jail. So interesting opinions along a lot of these different subjects here. But let's go back to those phone lines here right now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. See what we can squeeze in before the end of the show here. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
Well, I had something in mind, but I just was pondering this equivalency that Raul made about alcohol and fentanyl, as if there's somehow equivalent. I find that quite humorous. But I also wanted to call about basically the actions of the government over the last couple of years. And I think people should really sit back and think about how, lockdowns, the government shutting down businesses, how that has really taken off more years of people's life probably than the virus itself could have. And they're probably doing those studies, and they've done some studies that show the lockdowns didn't really make a difference, and how places like Florida fared pretty well even though they were open. And we should be thankful that half of the states did open things up pretty quickly, because if the entire country had locked down as hard as like California did, boy, we would be in bigger trouble right now when it comes to inflation and everything else. But since it was brought up, I think it's important to note that these monopolies and corruption with the government and corporations is actually thanks to bigger government. I mean, big corporations love regulation, because it is the corporations who write the laws, essentially through lobbyists and so forth, that help squash the competition. So if you want more monopolies, just vote for bigger government, because that's where the corruption really comes in. I mean, you want to talk about drugs. I mean, there's some great drugs that are available overseas, over in Canada and Mexico, that we just don't have access to because the FDA doesn't allow them over. So, you lose the competition, you pay higher prices, and that's actually thanks to lobbyists from the corporations and the kind of corruption going on there. So Raul has it exactly wrong, opposite of what should be done. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it brings to mind what we see in this area, the medical tourism that happens. I mean, I'm sure everyone knows someone's been like, hey, do you want me to get that insert drug name here for you over in Juarez, because it'll be umpteen amounts cheaper. I've had that experience on my own. And frankly, when we were dealing in the lead up to the pandemic, member of my family was worried about essentially their, prescription drugs, an inhaler that had suddenly gone in very short supply in here, but was available over the counter in Juarez. So not something we've usually done, but they ended up making that choice to get it because, it was necessary. So that's just kind of a small example of, kind of what you're talking about there.
Right. So, I mean, you just keep voting for more government, more powerful government, bigger government, more regulation. What you're going to get is actually more corruption, more monopolistic features to our supposed capitalist system. I mean, I think it's interesting. A lot of people are criticizing, capitalism is not working. It's not working. That's because we don't have capitalism. Unfortunately, a lot of the capitalism has been worn away ever since the progressive era. I mean, just think of Social Security. I mean, if you would have just put all of that money that we put into Social Security, if you would have put that money in a mutual fund, you would have 4 times the return that you're going to get with Social Security. And that's supposed to be something that the progressives are really happy about, is the Social Security program. It's bankrupt. It's broke. So I kind of have to laugh whenever people kind of foster these progressive programs, which are, for the most part, failures.
I mean, you bring us some interesting points there. Tell you what, we're going to have to take that next break right now, but a couple of phrases come to mind here for me. The idea that, that there should be less involvement, and also that the government that governs best governs least here. But we'll have to take that next break right now. A whole lot more comments coming in. Squeezing what we can for the end of the program here. Talk about what we got coming up next show here. So thank you for the point in the call. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the I-10 eastbound, police are responding to a crash at Copia Street and the 10 eastbound. Expect delays. I-10 eastbound at Piedras, a stalled vehicles blocking the left shoulder. Donovan at Sunland Park, an earlier injury accident still being worked on. And Piedras, north of Missouri at Cypress, an injury accident there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Walmart. Ready to live healthier this spring? Walmart can help you get there. Stop by their Wellness Day event on Saturday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to check your blood pressure, glucose, and more for free. Live healthier, live better. Check out Walmart Wellness Day on April 23rd.
As the country bounces back from COVID and mask mandates are lifted, your business needs a lift too. Promote your company right here, right now. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM and FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Hey, spring is here, and the warmer weather means you've got a lot more going on. Don't let COVID get in the way of any of it. COVID vaccines offer the strongest possible protection now and from long-term effects in the future. Protect yourself and your plans. We can do this. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. That's vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents.
And Doug. Don't you just love the smell of old books? Shh, this is a library. Sorry, ma'am. We're looking for a book titled Liberty Mutual Customizes Your Car Insurance so you only pay for what you need.
I don't think we carry that, but check nonfiction.
He really does devour literature.
Please leave.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s, like go back to college, learn to skateboard. Whoa. Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. At aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a free 3-minute chat with the friendly digital retirement coach, Avo, and receive personalized tips to help boost your savings. Start chatting with Avo today at aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso. Short time to get here this segment, trying to get to what we can here on the show. Well, a couple of things we got coming up for you. Of course, we're going to be talking more about local investigative reporting tomorrow as part of our recurring segment, talking about the work of Estefania Seifert and our news partners over there at KFOX 14, the segments they come out with. You may have seen the recent ones that they did that we had talked about last week, including on, Sun Metro and other issues here, including also some of those, government budgets, that kind of stuff that takes a little bit more time to develop. That we're very much in support of more being done here in the borderland community. So we'll be getting to that also later in the week, talking more with, some cross-border perspective, or I guess across the border in other sections of the sector here that we talk about. So a lot more we're working on for you, as well as more focus on some of these candidates ahead of these runoffs. So stay tuned for all of that. Here, let's squeeze in at least one more call here. Again, we do have that pound 250 system, which you can leave us a message here. I have one that I've been meaning to get to. Had some technical failings with here. But again, if you want to dial pound 250, do that on your cell phone. Dial all four of those digits, or symbols, I guess you should say, pound or hashtag 250. Leave us your own message, much like this.
This is Messiah Frankie. I just heard Barbara. What is this mush? What is so wrong about calling people names? I'm not talking vulgar names. I'm talking very finitely detailed, beautifully used language to smash, bash, dash, and gash ignorant morons. They should be pilloried. They should be shamed because of their stupid ignorance. I just try to talk to these people normally. You can't do that. You've got to call them names. You've got to shame them. You've got to be able to tell them flat out they're jerks. There's nothing wrong with name calling, Barbara.
Again, I'm not even going to try to hold that line here, but we do hope that all of our callers bring up interesting and discussable points here. If it's just name calling, let's just say that's the other direction here. But at least one more call we can get to on the line here. We do have Harry on the east side here with us. Harry, we got about a minute here.
Hey, good stuff, El Paso. Raul and Barbara, great stuff. If I had my way, all 800,000 people in El Paso would be required to listen to this show. But today we kind of got it wrong. What's important, what we should have been discussing is Johnny Depp's and Amber Heard's $1 million law settlement. And Amber Heard, by the way, is a Texas girl, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Matt was a great guy, but there's nothing new as far as politicians, what they're going to tell you, what they're for, and what they're going to change things. It amounts to me to nothing. You know what causes change? Keep the prices of gasoline and food continue to rise. That will cause things to change. People will wake up and they'll be dealing with situations with their politicians as required to make them change. That's my comment today.
I mean, I think your perspective there is important, and I'm sure our national news updates are full of that previous point here, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we did mention that inflation is a concern of his, but we were focused primarily on the border issues as we do in this area, so I wouldn't be surprised if this comes up further here. And yeah, there's a difference between what party platforms are putting on, what they're talking about, but then also, what people may demand, and we're getting a little bit towards that later part with some of your issues there here. So unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there for today because we are out of time here for this program. I want to thank everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. Y'all really do help make this show what it is in terms of our discussion of the things that affect us here in the borderland. So in the meantime, we'll be back tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. Otherwise, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the I-10 eastbound, police are responding to a crash at Copia Street and the 10 eastbound. Expect delays. I-10 eastbound at Piedras, a stalled vehicles blocking the left shoulder. Donovan at Sunland Park, an earlier injury accident still being worked on. And Piedras, north of Missouri at Cypress, an injury accident there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you, El Paso and surrounding areas, for helping us be El Paso's #1 dealer in new Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram sales in March. As a gesture of our gratitude, we've extended all our Ram Truck Month deals, like 0 down, 0% interest for 72 months and no payments for 90 days.
Buy now and save thousands on a huge inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. All new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer full-size SUV with third-row seating. 0 APR for 72 months. 0 payments for 90 days. We've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms, even if your credit is less than perfect. And we want your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebated dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APR is $13.89 per thousand finance. All select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The Justice Department says it will appeal the ruling which lifted the federal mask mandate. However, DOJ spokesman Anthony Coley said the DOJ will only appeal if the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention determines the mandate remains necessary for the public's health. The president of the Association of Flight Attendants is speaking out now that masks are no longer required on airplanes. Dina Kodiak has the details.
Sarah Nelson noted people were in flight, some who may have bought a ticket because of the mask requirement when it was suddenly announced folks no longer had to mask up.
It's always difficult when decisions are made and policies are changed on a moment's notice.
Nelson said she's angry at the airlines for putting pilots and flight attendants in the position to make these announcements, calling it a misstep. She insisted planes should never take off with one set of rules before changing them in a confined space mid-flight. I'm Dina Kodiak.
President Biden is opening up about possibly visiting the war-torn country of Ukraine.